What if losing a loved one wasn't about an ending, but a new way to connect? Join us as we welcome Bethany Shelton, founder of Be Limitless Now, Heart Alchemist, and Grief to Growth Guide. Bethany shares her raw and radiant journey through the unimaginable loss of her only child and how a profound sign, a brilliant rainbow after burial, opened her to a new understanding. Discover how she walks between worlds, guiding others out of the mental noise and into heart presence to transform pain into purpose. Learn to release lower aspects such as blame, shame, and grief, and step into a limitless potential, finding new ways to connect with those who have crossed over and awaken your divine essence. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Welcome. Let me share a little bit about the incredible guest that we have with us today. Bethany Shelton is a soul-led visionary and founder of Be Limitless Now, dedicated to awakening the limitless power within. After the profound loss of her only child, she rose to become a spiritual mentor and heart alchemist, specializing in guiding others to transform pain into purpose and connect with their divine essence, bridging the seen and unseen worlds. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today, Bethany. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show.
Hi, April. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
It's such an honor. You're welcome. Now, you have such an intriguing story, and not many of us have lost, right? But to lose a child is something that none of us want to ever experience. But it's not only about the loss, it's the after effect of everything that happens and how you have really shifted life and how you're shifting others' lives because of this. So I'm very pleased to bring this to our audience to share what you have experienced and what you're doing about it. And so let's get started by sharing a little bit more so the audience can get to know you.
Great. Well, I'm Bethany. I'm the founder of Be Limitless Now. In 2020, my worst fear came to reality. I was a stay-at-home mom for most of my son's life. And on 2020, I got a call that he had passed in a tragic car accident. A driver crossed over and killed him instantly. And I can still remember the sound of the scream I let out when I found this information out. It was the kind of scream that only a mother can understand and feel. I think I still kind of get teary when I think about the scream.
I'm trying not to get teary.
Yeah, I mean, it echoes still to this day. But something amazing happened with my son's name is Kevin, and he communicates with me just like I'm communicating with you right here, right now. I can hear his voice, I can hear his laughter in my ear right as I'm giving this talk. So it's pretty amazing. But yeah, so on the day of the burial, I asked God, I was like, God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I need your guidance. I need a sign or something, Kevin, somebody, something, give me that sign that he's okay. Well, as I'm walking away from the burial site, it was a cloudy day, and my best friend of 36 years was holding my arm, and we were walking back to the car. And in that moment, she pulled my arm and she said, look, the clouds separated and a rainbow popped through. In that moment, I found peace and love for that moment. And the next year was a year of absolute grief. I can hardly remember most of that first year. But here's where it gets interesting. My son, my son started to communicate with me. And I had no awareness that this was even possible. One day I go to get into the bathroom to go get in the shower, and I notice there's coins inside of my bathtub. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I don't shower with clothes or coins. And there was nickels, dimes, pennies in this bathtub. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So I took a look at it, and they were either his birth year or his death year. So that's interesting. So I kind of got the little bit of awareness, A few days later, I go and look, and inside the toilet bowl, there's change. And I was like, that's random. But I still didn't put it together. So one morning I get up out of my bed, and as I always do, I make my bed. Well, that night I go get inside my bed, and there's coins, not dimes, nickels, pennies, quarters inside of my bed. And I was like, no, I know when I made my bed this morning, these coins were not in there. What in the world is going on? Well, I find them in the floor. And then one day where it totally just blew me out of the water, I was vacuuming my carpet in the living room. I vacuumed it, did everything. It's all beautiful. I go put the vacuum cleaner up, and I walk back into the living room, and I just vacuumed this floor, and there's coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies on this freshly vacuumed floor that was not there a moment before. And I looked at it, and it had his birth year and his death year. I said, oh my gosh, what in the world's going on? So I called my parents. I was like, Mom, Dad, something strange going on. I'm finding these coins everywhere. My mom was like, Bethany, I am too. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I think they're from Canada. And I was like, yeah. So in that moment, I felt elevated. I felt excitement. I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't only happening to me, it's happening to his grandparents. So I called out, I said, Kevin, if this is you, man, can you come to me as a blue jay or a red bird? The very next day, everywhere I turned was a blue jay or a cardinal. Everywhere I turned. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I got so excited. I was like, this child's trying to communicate with me. And I mean, in that moment, my heart was full. It was full of joy. I was like, oh, what else is possible here? This is totally cool. Well, one day his dad and I were sitting on the couch. We were just, watching a TV program. And all of a sudden, Kevin's favorite song that his dad had no recollection, his dad didn't have his playlist. He had no idea. Well, this song comes blaring across his dad's phone, and we couldn't shut it off at all. I mean, it's just blaring, and I slightly heard a laugh, but I didn't, I was like, so his dad and I just started laughing uncontrollably. And so in that moment, we're elevated, we're excited, we're in joy. We feel a sense of somewhat of connection. Well, then everywhere we went, we were seeing these blue jays and cardinals. So I linked that back to when I asked out to, for him to communicate. They were everywhere. Well, then, Kevin really decided, okay, let's mess with Mom. Let me start playing with lights. And I mean, out of nowhere, this ceiling fan would start going. And I was like, what in the world is going on? So when I noticed that I was getting in these elevated, excited joy, of what's coming next, what could possibly be next, the communication started to get more and more. And then I started to, I'd take his dog on a walk, and I would start to hear audio, because my son was I called him my little nerd. He was such a little geek. He loved to just read. And so one day I was walking his dog and I said, man, Kevin, I was having a little talk with him, man, I sure wish you would give me a sign. Well, about that time, lo and behold, this bird flies down and his dog started barking and looking at it crazy. And all of a sudden I heard, Mom, you're such a goofball. And I was, what in the world? And this bird started just looking at me and, just gawking. And I was like, oh, and the audio, and I was like, this is amazing. I had no idea that this was possible. And I just stayed in that elevation of excitement, joy, love, appreciation. And one day Kevin, came to me. He said, Mom, I need to tell you something. I was like, okay. I'm sitting on the couch. He said, Mom, when I was alive and we were, on the physical realm, we were on this pretty much the same vibration. I was like, yeah, I get that. He said, but Mom, when I crossed over, I rose in frequency. I elevated. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just transforms. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. He said, so I elevated. He said, but Mom, when I crossed, you dropped. You went into grief, blame, shame, less than, hurt, fear, anxiety, hurt, worry. And he said, you see how far it is for us to communicate when you're like that? And I said, my gosh.
Yeah.
What? And so then when he brought it to me like that, I said, okay, now I have this information. I can choose something different. Now that I know this, now it is time for me to show up and show out. And I just became so excited. And I started to transform and heal in ways that are so foreign to me, that has brought me so much peace and communication and love. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things from all this. When he brought me that in here, I had no idea.
That's an incredible way to describe it. And it makes so much sense, right? Because, and most of us know, most people, I would say, is that it doesn't just go away. That when you've experienced a loss, or if you're in fields where you're around death, you sense that there's an energy outside of that body, or that has gone somewhere. You sense it. But you're right. If you are on those way low frequencies, you're far from that, where you're not as connected. And when you started to open up, you started to see more signs, more coins, etc. And your energy was just lifting, and you were becoming hopeful and excited and curious. Curiosity is one of those things that really helps bring us up, isn't it? It's like, what can we discover next? I wonder. And so you started opening yourself up to be able to bring in more of that and more of those incredible things that is beyond the veil, right? And so I'm super curious, because you said that you had no awareness of things like this to begin with, that there was any sort of ways for those who have passed to communicate. What was your background prior to all of this, where you were so disconnected maybe?
Well, here's the awareness. As a young child, I was diagnosed as ADD, ADHD. I was in the 3rd, 4th grade, and my parents took me, great parents that they are back then, they took me to a psychiatrist and they medicated me. They gave me, Ritalin and Adderall. And so this taught me at a young age that I was not accepted for who I was. I had to be drugged, medicated to be accepted by society. So I ran that program of not enough, unworthiness, and I was an addict for many years because of that program, in which I learned at such a young age. And
right, because not only are you vibrating at lower frequencies because of the way you feel about yourself and that belief system, but you are medicated, which dulls all of those senses greatly.
Yeah. So I was, I did that whole program for many of my years and stuck in the lower aspects of, as I said before, the blame, shame, guilt, less than, not enough, worry, fear, anxiety of just not being enough by society standards. I had to medicate and drug to be accepted. So yeah, before his passing, was one of the main programs that I, ran. And through addiction, incarceration. Yeah. So when Kevin passed, my whole world flipped. I totally flipped everything on the head and changed every aspect of my life in a way to elevate and heal myself. Kevin brought me the healing of assisted me in finding who I am, and it's okay to be exactly who you are. We don't have to be perfect. That's the program, but to know thyself is the healing mechanism. And my biggest thing was to get out of here and step into here.
Yeah.
And, like attracts like. The energy. So if you're stuck in the lower aspects, you're only attracting more of those lower frequency thoughts, feelings, and emotions. What is emotions? Energy in motion. So once I started to get excited, in my world, because as you can expect, my whole everything in one day, my life was no longer as I once knew it. And so instead of continuing the pain looping and the storytelling in my mind, I chose differently. I'm going to do something different here. And through love and through acceptance of myself, I chose differently in each now moment. And so, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest eye-opening experiences. What I thought was my biggest fear has turned into my greatest triumph.
Thank you for sharing that, Bethany. And I wanted to bring your background story to the forefront a little bit so our listeners can have an understanding if they haven't been tapping into those sort of frequencies before, or they have a past themselves that they were really unaware and disconnected, and they're learning about all of this incredibleness now and how to tune in by raising those frequencies, by being in those elevated states of emotion. And so you have an awesome kid, by the way, leading the way to be able to show you the way and to show others the way. And something that I love greatly about this is that not only has it changed your world in that sense, where you are connected more to that soul level, that heart centered, to be able to see and sense that which we can't normally physically, right? Because there's so much more. I think it's 99.9% or whatever, right? So this physical reality is not as much reality that we think and experience. But you talked about how it brings other things into your world. And so we'll move into our commercial. And when we get back, let's talk about the people and the experiences that you started running into. So stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. Here with the incredible Bethany Shelton. You have shared an extraordinary story. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing all of those aspects and pieces and background to why you are doing what you do today. And I wanted to bring in some aspects of what follows next when you start going to those higher frequencies. It's not only that you start, it's almost this unawareness of all of these magical things that start coming in, just like you experienced more and more and more incredible things, yes, that were mind-blowing. What were some of the people and the other experience that started coming in for you? Because I know that you wouldn't be doing what you are doing now. And we talked a little bit off screen where you mentioned, you're like, if you would have asked me, however long ago, if I would be doing what I'm doing now, I would have thought you were insane. And it's fascinating where life takes us.
Yes. I mean, if you would have told me back in 2020, when my son, that this is what I'd be doing, I had told you you lost your mind. You have lost your mind. There's no way. But yeah, once you start healing and feeling and taking your present moment and start choosing differently for yourself, there is going to be so many expansive information, intelligence start attracting to you, because now you've changed your vibration. Now you've changed your frequency. So only light can attract light. So once you start healing and feeling, more of this is going to start coming your way. I cannot tell you how much information, beings, people, frequencies have changed in my life once I started healing and feeling. And I mean, I have met some of the most impressive people on this healing journey because I chose to change my frequency, such as the amazing Susan Schatzer, such as Zinka Caro, such as, I met Bashar. I have traveled from one part of this country to the other, meeting different beings on different healing aspects. And so if you are willing and ready to change your life, I cannot tell you how amazing this journey will be. It'll be more magical than you ever possibly thought. Ever. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you're right. That's exactly it. And again, I mentioned that you have such a brilliant child. What a cool kid, because just the way in which he strove so hard to show you, and not only that, but influenced others, mom and dad, to really make an impact, to be seen, to have you seek more information and to be able to see more and then hear more, right? Really tapping into that inner side, the places that we don't normally go. And when you're living in that fear and that sadness and the stress, there's no way to access any of that. You have to be more open and more curious and have that calming sense to yourself. And that's why I advocate so strongly to go within every single day, make that one of the most important things. And so I'm curious, what are some of the things that you do on a daily basis to really help you continue tapping in? Because it is a continuous process. We all know how easy it is to get sunk down into those lower frequencies when something happens, because we've lived an entire life of those cycles mentally where we're used to going there, right? And so it's a continuous process. Tell us, Bethany, what are some of the things that you do?
I am, if I can do this, I promise you can do this. If gaining awareness of self and gaining awareness of your frequency is the number one healing modality that one can possibly do. If you have a crossed over loved one, I promise you, they are trying to communicate with you, but you are unaware of the communication. You're thinking or feeling that you should communicate with them the same way that you did in 3D human form. And that's just not a thing. What if the death or what if the transformation was never about losing them. What if it's about finding a new way of communicating and connecting? Because I promise you they are, but you're just not aware. So what I do every day is I get heart centered. I get out of the mind, and that's what I do with my clients. We take a step back and look, what are we creating for ourselves? What are you choosing to put your focus on? What if I told you you had a mental body? What if I told you your thoughts are a frequency again? And what are you creating? What are you doing? Are you choosing? You might not be aware or, of it, but are you choosing to stay blocked and stopped? Gaining the mind is one of the biggest healing modalities that I help my clients with. Once you do that, you get into your heart. Healing, like I said before, healing is feeling. Presence, the now is creator. Right here, you have choice. No, right here, you're no more a victim. Right here, you can now choose what you wish to experience. What you think about, you bring about. What you bring about, you experience. So gaining the awareness of thyself and being the creator of your each day, each now moment is the biggest, what I call flex and healing that you can possibly do for yourself. Getting out of the block, getting out of the stop, getting out of the mental chatter. I can remember I used to always get in my car and drive to the grocery store. And I would be in my mind would just run free. I mean, what am I doing? I had no idea. We were not taught these things that what we think about, we bring about, what we bring about, we experience. We're just been programmed and told to get the right answer, be a good human, think about it, study hard. That's what we were taught to do as children. Sit at the desk, study, think. When in reality, shutting the mind off and getting into your heart, you are now being a different human when you do that. You are now doing something so random, so cool that you're not thinking about anything. You're just right here. This is all I need to do. And when you operate out of your heart, man, you're already in a different frequency than most.
Yeah.
You're already in higher elevation and aspects because you're in your heart space. That is a frequency in itself. It's more than just an organ pumping blood through your body. This is a frequency all on its own. So that's what I guide my clients through, how to get out of your mind, get into your heart. And then I guarantee you when those happen, communication and connection will happen.
Yeah. The miraculous happens, right? What many of us perceive as that. And that's why you're here doing what you do, because when we start going into those creative pieces of ourselves, yes. I mean, the mind just explodes. I mean, you have all of these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, I could create this and do this. And it just doesn't stop. It's really an incredible experience. And so that's what you have done. You've created this beautiful business in order to serve and show and lead people the way, just like your son has. And I think that is so beautiful. Now, you mentioned too that most of us don't know that we can communicate with our loved ones and that they are trying to communicate. You said, I promise you, they are communicating. You just don't see it. You don't hear it. You don't understand it. You're not connected with that. And I agree 1,000% with you, where there's always signs. There's always signs. And it brings me to a time when I'll just give a quick example. I just received news that my cousin's husband had passed away in a very brutal way. And the news came to me. I didn't hear it from her directly. It was through the family grapevine. And I was so shocked because we were all very, very close to him. He was somebody in the family that was so generous, and we all loved him very, very much. We were all very close. And I'm like, I was out on a nature walk, which I also strongly suggest, connecting back with nature. And I was like, Tony, if you're really gone, give me a sign. And like that, a deer crossed our path. And Tony was very, very into nature also. He loved to be outside. He loved to hunt. He farmed. And so like all of these things, it was just instant. And I knew, and I was like, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And it was still very hard to believe, but I knew that it was true, and very, very sad. But it's just an example of how fast and how quick. And if you ask, you mentioned and you gave the example of, hey, Kevin, if this is you, then can you show yourself in a blue jay or a cardinal or something? And you got it. You got it the next day. And he was like, I'm here. And so when we ask for specific signs too, that is a great way of communicating, and they will show it to you. So I really appreciate that you brought that in, because it's learning how to communicate, because you are not taught that, just like you mentioned. And I love that we have come out more with all of the science and the tools and of showing the expression of what our bodies and the heart center does. And that heart center does blast out so much frequency of whatever emotion that we are feeling. So thank you so much. I have a curious question. So you have the Be Limitless now, right? Yes, Be Limitless is right on the screen, right? So where did the bee stem from?
Well, this is amazing. My uncle called me Bumblebee all of my life. My nephew calls me Aunt Bee. I have a queen bee on tattooed. I got back in, when I'm in my early 20s. So bees are something very, very personal to me. It's just an amazing, I just connect with it. I'm Aunt Bee. So yeah, what better way to be limitless now? And, it's funny, real quick, I had a synchronicity just a few days ago that was hilarious to me. My dad asked me, he was like, hey, Bethany, let's go to the farmer's market. I was all right, let's go. So I drove and I get in the left-hand turn lane. I live in a city with about, 1 million people in my county. So I pull up in the left-hand lane and, when you're healing and feeling, when you're out of here and into your heart and you're waiting for communication and synchronicity signs, here's one. I'm in the turn lane and the car in front of me has a license plate BEE on the back of a Nissan Rogue. And I laughed so hard. This is hilarious. I mean, what's the odds of a B Rogue? Because I'm being rogue. I'm in a frequency that is so different and rare that the signs and synchronicities will come through and the universe will speak to you in the most random, elevated, fun ways. And your guides and your teams, your angelic, your galactic, your indigenous, and your ancestors, and my son, what better way to give me a synchronicity right there? So yeah, and that happens. I can go on and on about all that. It's just amazing. So yeah, I knew I was on the right when I named it right when I saw that validation on the back of the car. B is rogue. So I was like, yes.
That's one of the funnest things about being an entrepreneur or creating your own business, because it's you. And, our businesses are a direct reflection of us. And, so I think that is beautiful and fascinating. And I agree with you. Play with those words to make it so personal and so you, because I think people get in their heads a lot about, well, I don't know if everybody's going to like that or accept that. It doesn't matter what they like. Mm-hmm. They'll be drawn to you. Your audience will be drawn to you, just like our audience here. They like the content. They might even like me a little bit. I don't know. But, it's the people will come. And so I love that you bring that. The synchronicities. Yeah, you're right. You can't, you could, I think it's important to keep a journal in the beginning. You start listing down all of those things that that start to come, the evidence. A lot of people will call it evidence, right? So your evidence journal of all of the crazy things that you see. Oh, this was a heart shape and it reminded me of this. And I saw this bird and this feather and these coins and this license plate and these numbers and all of the things, right? They're constantly coming to us and speaking to us and leading the ways. And when we start to tune in and we hear those little voices of intuition and we actually listen to them and act on them, it's fascinating. So list those two in that little journal. And so Bethany, it has been amazing having you on the show, sharing your story and your journey and all the things that you're doing. I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. So we've had it displayed here on the screen throughout the show. For those of you watching, for those of you listening in, BEE limitlessnow.com. Easy peasy. It's also in the description below. Check out her site, schedule time with her. I always find it fascinating when people really open themselves up to free time, and Bethany offers that. So if you're drawn to her, schedule a 30-minute with her and listen more extensively to her stories. If you feel drawn to her, connect with her. So, Bethany, is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Man, just healing is feeling. Get into your heart. Choose something different for yourself. This world is way more magical than we were ever taught or ever led to believe. Choose yourself today in this now moment. Choose healing. Healing is feeling. So thank you for your time. I have enjoyed this so very much, from my heart to all of yours. Mwah. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. And thank you so much to our audience, because without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.
Bye.